Viewers, devious China. Devious China has broken the peace after 45 years along the LAC. The consequences are grim. Indian troops that were out on a routine patrol to ensure that the Chinese were following up on their side of the bargain and withdrawing from the Galwan Valley positions that they had occupied illegally, found that the Chinese had broken the pact. Angry Indian troops confronted the Chinese and asked them, why is it that they weren't honoring the pact that had been reached and very publicly agreed upon? The Chinese retaliated in large numbers, as they had not, of course, withdrawn. The Indians were overwhelmed. They were attacked and outnumbered. The Chinese pulled out rods and hurled stones like thugs. The Indian side did not back down. This, viewers, is the new India. We held our ground and we hit back. In the ensuing fracas, in the altercation, several of the Chinese troops were injured and some were killed. The Indians have also taken casualties. 3 confirmed, some others unspecified. We are awaiting some word from the Indian military on the exact numbers. But we can tell you on both sides, there have been casualties. The Chinese have got a measure of this new, redoubtable, and obviously, viewers, resolute India. We will no longer back down. This is not the India of 1962. India will build infrastructure on its side of the LAC. It will ensure that its own interests are protected. For 70 years, what was not done is being done. The Chinese are upset, the Chinese are angry, the Chinese are insecure, and they resort to cowardice. But that cowardice is not going to in any way intimidate us. We will not be bullied, China. We will, in fact, teach you who you are dealing with. This is not Nepal, this is not Pakistan, this is not Sri Lanka, this is India, that is Bharat. We will stand toe to toe and we will pull your eyes out if it comes to it. I want to go straight across to our intrepid team of reporters that has been out there for the last 12 hours in the baking heat, bringing you details. Internal Security Editor Nikunj Garg and Times Now Senior Editor Politics Megha Prasad. I want to draw you in first, Megha. Large number of conversations are happening in government, and the MEA has issued a statement which has come out. And before I come to you and ask you about the meetings and what really is transpiring, let me very quickly update our viewers on the statement that has come up. In response to media queries on the situation in the western sector of the India-China border, the official spokesperson, Mr. Anurag Srivastava, has come out and said, and I quote, India and China have been discussing through military and diplomatic channels the de-escalation of the situation in the border area in eastern Ladakh. Senior commanders had a productive meeting on the 6th of June 2020 and agreed on a process for such de-escalation. Subsequently, ground commanders had a series of meetings to implement the consensus reached at a higher level. While it was our expectation that this would unfold smoothly, the Chinese side departed from the consensus to respect the line of actual control in the Galwan Valley. On the late evening and night of 15th June 2020, which is last night, viewers, a violent face-off happened as a result of an attempt by the Chinese side to unilaterally change the status quo there. Both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided had the agreement at the higher level been scrupulously followed by the Chinese side. Given its responsible approach to border management, India is very clear that all activities are always within the Indian side of the LAC. We expect the same of the Chinese side. We remain firmly convinced of the need for the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border area and the resolution of differences through dialogue. At the same time, we are also strongly committed to ensuring India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Very firm statement put out by the MEA on the back of what has been a military escalation along the LAC, an escalation that was triggered by the PLA, the cowardly PLA that behaved in a goonish and thuggish manner by pulling out rods and pelting stones at Indian Army commanders and Indian troops on the ground. Let me also tell you, viewers, that India has told Pakistan and its great big sponsor, China, that it will not tolerate any altercation of the status quo. But this message has gone out specifically for the Chinese, undiluted message, and let me repeat it to you. The Chinese side departed from the consensus to respect the line of actual control in the Galwan Valley. You cannot lie China anymore. You cannot spread through paid media organizations internationally to carry your line. We will call you out. We have the guts to call you out, and you can do what you want to. That is the message that is going out from our government to the Chinese. And let me also tell you, viewers, that the MEA has made it clear that, and it's very important, both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided. So the Chinese can no longer duck its responsibility to tell the world at large how many of its own soldiers, and I know those numbers, viewers, because we've been speaking with army commanders who have retired but had served in that particular area till very recently, and they've been in touch with the troops, and we know exactly the number of Chinese troops that have been decimated by India's brave army. So you cannot lie anymore. Let me go straight across to Srinjoy Chaudhary, Consulting National Affairs Editor of Times Now, who has accessed this statement and has been in touch with a large number of officials in the Ministry of External Affairs. Nikunj Garg also there with us, Internal Security Editor, that covers the Home Ministry apart from the other agencies, and Megha Prasad. Megha, before I bring in Srinjoy, very quickly to you, the meetings that have been going on, the Prime Minister in the last 1 hour has been busy keeping himself abreast of all the developments. Very quickly, bring us up to speed.
All right, Rahul, so what we are being told is that, what has happened in Galwan Valley is unprecedented, and that is why you have all of this being dealt at the highest level. At the same time, I'm also being told, Rahul, that while the Prime Minister is involved at every step of the way, RM briefing him in the morning, RM briefing him right now, driving to his residence, and with the Foreign Minister also by his side. So each of them, who's actually directly involved with what is happening in the Eastern Ladakh sector, is there with the Prime Minister sitting and abreast and telling him exactly what the ground situation is. Despite that, Rahul, I'm being told that the political leadership of India will not engage with China just as yet, and that's a very important bit of information. The political leadership, it does not wish to engage with China at that level right now. So it will continue to be at the military level, at the diplomatic level. The negotiations will continue. Rahul, very important to note that despite the fact that both sides have suffered casualties with what has happened in Galwan Valley late last night, there was a request for a meeting at the military level by China, to which India agreed, and I believe that meeting is still on at the venue of the altercation. So they are trying their best to de-escalate at that level itself through negotiations. That's an extremely important point to note. Neither of the side, at least from the side of India, they do not want any military escalation. So we are hoping that through talks, this situation will be diffused. One is hoping for that, and Government of India wants it to move in that direction.
Now, before I come out to you, Srinjoy and Nikunj, let me very quickly sum up the 5 main takeaways from the statement that has been released by the MEA. The first takeaway, viewers, is that the Chinese departed from the consensus to respect the line of actual control in the Galwan Valley. So India has called out what is Chinese departure from the consensus, from the spirit of the agreement that was to see the de-escalation from both sides in the Galwan Valley. Number one. Number two, viewers, very important, the Chinese have been accused of changing unilaterally the status quo there. Unilaterally. This is nothing to do with India provoking China in any which way. This is unilateral Chinese action to change the status quo. Number three, the onus of avoiding casualties has been equally placed on China. In fact, singularly placed on China. Both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided had the agreement at the higher level been scrupulously followed by the Chinese side. So India is blaming, viewers, China squarely for the casualties that have resulted from the misadventures, the deviousness of the Chinese. Number 4, India has very clearly stated that it was well within, its activities were well within the Indian side of the LAC. So Chinese propaganda released by their Western theater commander has been debunked by India. And 5th, the most important takeaway, India has resolved to once again place faith in the maintenance of peace and tranquility in the border areas and the resolution of differences through dialogue. And lastly, viewers, the 6th point, the 6th main takeaway, India has also let it be known that it is strongly committed to ensuring India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We will not back off. We will not back off. Nikunj Garg, that's the message. We will not back off. 6 takeaways.
Well, Rahul, that is a message that must travel across to China loud and clear. The deceitful conduct of the Chinese PLA that has been now witnessed by the entire world in a rearguard action which, no professional, self-respecting army would ever engage in. They have drawn the blood. They have drawn the casualty of the CEO and his 2 juniors. Now, army will, of course, officially put those casualties. We don't want to get into too much into that. But this is unsoldierly conduct. The fact of the matter is that a consensus was agreed upon, as the MEA points, and the action that was of disengagement was taking place accordingly. And despite that, the Indians who were standing guard on their own territory in a deceitful manner, Chinese have, carried out action against them. Obviously, the world must take note of this. This is not a fight that India alone is going to fight, because this kind of deceitful conduct is at display by the China all across the world, be it the South Chinese Sea, be it the CPAC, be it RCEP, in every which forum, the Chinese deceitful conduct is visible to the world, and that is why the world is now joining hands in a coalition which wants to check this Chinese not playing by the international rules and rule of law as followed by the rest of the world community. And India must now become the bulwark of the world against the Chinese, because this deceitful conduct must be explained to the entire world, and that's what is going to expose China all over the world.
Very quickly, Srinjoy, what we have been told by the MEA is that they are not responsible. It's the Chinese that are completely responsible. India has had no hand in this. Chinese propaganda has been blunted, yet no mention really of the casualties, the absolute number of casualties on either side. We were expecting a statement from the Defense Ministry, or at the very least from the spokesperson of the army. When is that expected? And what is the news that you're getting roughly on the casualties?
Well, the casualties, Rahul, is this. Officially, only 3 names have come out. But what we've heard is that a certain number of Indian soldiers have succumbed to their injuries. So there are certainly more than 3 people who have been killed. Perhaps a few more people have died fighting the Chinese. That's really the first point. There have been a large number of injuries on either side, it has to be said. The Chinese have also suffered casualties. The Indian side very squarely has said, well, it's up to the Chinese to say how many fatal casualties there has been. On the Indian side, officially there has been 3. We know that there have been a few more because certain people have succumbed to their injuries. So it's definitely more than 3.
Yes.
But the other thing is there are a large number of people injured. Rahul, what kind of army will attack other soldiers with stones, with iron rods? It's not the way you fight a battle. And here was Indian Army personnel who was standing by. The CO was standing by. He was just looking to see if the agreement was being followed, if the Chinese were going back as they had agreed to go back. And suddenly you find them attacking with stones and with iron rods. Which army uses iron rods, Rahul?
Well, a roguish, thuggish army. And the Chinese have behaved in a roguish, thuggish way with half the world in the Asian hemisphere. No surprise. Stay on with me. I know it's been a long day, Nikunj, Megha and Srinjo. I just want to go across to some of our top experts tonight to get a sense of how they are viewing both the Indian initial reaction, the Ministry of External Affairs reaction, as well as, of course, the actions of the Chinese. I want to first go across to General G.D. Bakshi, as well as Kanwal Sibal and Rajiv Pratap Rudy, Member of Parliament of the National Spokesperson of the BJP, and we have Ajay Shukla, Defense Journalist. I want to first begin with you, Kanwal Sibal. You have been, of course, Foreign Secretary. The Indian statement shedding some of the reserve of the past and squarely blaming China for this escalation and, of course, for the casualties. This departure from what would have been typically couched language to very direct and frank worded language. How do you read this?
Well, frankly, I can understand why the government wants to play it down. And it shows that it's a responsible government. It wants to de-escalate and doesn't want things to go out of control. And the language is matching that thinking. But if you look at it purely objectively, it's a very mild statement. Very mild statement. And to dismiss the killing of our CEO and 2 Jawans as avoidable casualties, I don't think it does it gives sufficient recognition to what has happened. I must again say that I can understand why the government is doing this, but it is not strong enough. It is still a timid and defensive statement and gives the impression that India is more keen to de-escalate the situation than the Chinese are. That is one. The other is that the full information still hasn't come out as to why it happened, how it happened. And what is amazing is that on the ground, 2 of the biggest armies of the world, they are conducting themselves as if we are in the Stone Age, using stones and clubs to hit each other and lynching each other. This is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And something should have about this in a
I think we've lost Mr. Sibal there mid-flow, but basically saying that it could have been a stronger statement. It wasn't. It was mild. It should have been much stronger and strident, the language. Let me ask you, Rajiv Pratap
No,
Rudy.
not strident. No. One
Okay.
second. It should not have been strident, but the blame on the Chinese should have been much clearer, much clearer. And the responsibility put on them far more forcefully and explicitly, which has not been done.
Blame should have been much clearer. This is what the Indian statement said very, very clearly this morning and this evening, right now, in the last 5 or 6 minutes. And let me just quickly once again reacquaint viewers. General G.D. Bakshi, I want your views on this. And of course, Rajiv Pratap Rudy, MP and National Spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. India has said, while it was the expectation that this would unfold smoothly, the Chinese side departed from the consensus to respect the LAC in the Galwan Valley. On the late evening and night of the 15th June 2020, a violent face-off happened as a result of an attempt by the Chinese side to unilaterally change the status quo there. Both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided had the agreement at the higher level been scrupulously followed by the Chinese side. This suggests that India is very clearly and in no uncertain terms blaming the Chinese side. Now, I want to ask you, General G.D. Bakshi, Kanwal Sibal says that this is a mild statement. Do you see it in the same terms, sir?
I agree with the former Foreign Secretary that he should have been more forthright in our condemnation of what China has done last night. A significant threshold has been crossed, Rahul. In the last 53 years, not one kinetic action has been done on this India-China border, right? We've had not one kinetic action, not one shot in anger had been taken, except for a brief, ambush in 1975. There has been no exchange of fire. The Peace and Tranquility Accord was actually working, and all that you witnessed was this comical charade of pushing, shoving, using sticks, iron rod, stone pelting, and what have you. This is not the way professional armies conduct themselves. There are tactical procedures, there are tactical standard operating procedures, and I fail to understand why they should have been given by so far. Well, we carried on with this kind of a tamasha, this annual recurring tamasha, because there were no casualties. Today, one colonel and two of our Jawan have paid with their life, have laid down their life. It is small consolation that five have died on the other side. Simple fact is that the threshold has been crossed.
And I, as a military man, would strongly urge that we make it plain to China that from tomorrow onwards, our troops are free to defend themselves with the weapons that the government of India has issued them with the ammunition that they have been provided with and trained very well in its use. This kind of a charade, this kind of a comical show has now crossed the threshold in which acts have taken place, boys have been martyred. There are 3 families today in India where the wife and children are in mourning. And the rest of the country is outraged.
Okay.
I don't think we should take this lying down. We have to now tell China clearly that there will be costs and consequences of pushing ahead with this annual tamasha.
Cost and consequences. There will be cost and consequences, says General Bakshi. I want to bring you in, Rajiv Pratap Rudy. A significant threshold has been crossed, says General Bakshi. Kanwal Sibal has also come out and said very clearly that this is a provocation which needed to have been addressed in stronger terms. Yet, India is keener to de-escalate than the Chinese. And the Chinese, the Global Times, in fact, is saying that the Chinese have done us a favor. This is what the Global Times chief editor has put out. The Chinese side didn't release number of PLA casualties in clash with Indian soldiers. My understanding is the Chinese side doesn't want people of the two countries to compare the casualty numbers so as to avoid stoking public mood. This is goodwill from Beijing. This is shocking, sir. Why don't we have the numbers out? Mr. Rudy.
Rahul, I just have to respond to General Bakshi and Mr. Sibal before I come to your point. Unfortunately, Mr. Sibal has been a career bureaucrat, and I don't know what he would have suggested if he was in that position. And when he says it's come to a stone age, and that means the Indian Army also had reached a stone age, and we do not know the facts, where it started, how it started, but we are aware that they wanted to establish a post beyond the LSC, and for that, so we have to be very careful, especially with the background Mr. Sibal has, what we say at these point of time when most of the facts are not aware. Coming back to General Bakshi, I think he has forgotten that he is not on a channel with an interview on Pakistan. He is on a channel with interview on China today. So possibly this is a major lapse in his understanding when he is talking that we should avenge them and things like that. The question arises here is, Rahul, and all of us agree, that there has been an Indo-China agreement on LAC in 1993, and it has been working fine for 27 years. The last which had happened, a similar situation had happened in 1975, when 4 Jawans were killed in Arunachal Pradesh. Post 1993, when Raghunathar Lal Bharti, our External Affairs Minister, and Tang Zhou-Yan, the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, they had signed an agreement. This was working very fine till yesterday or last week. And there were 5 points which was the basis of their agreement: mutual respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in the internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, peaceful coexistence. And there was a whole mechanism written out how it has to be out. There has to be a consultation, there has to be a respect of LOC, joint check if there was an intrusion, joint check
threshold has been crossed.
Forces to remain so and the forces to remain minimum. Now the question arises, here China deployed large forces. Huge deployment took place with arms and equipments. So China in a way was intruding and trying to violate its own, and there should be no air intervention and so forth and so on. So this was working fine. Except this is an unprecedented situation which has happened.
So the response should also be unprecedented, sir, should it not?
What has actually happened?
Okay, should the response not be unprecedented?
Yes. And yes, just a second, Rahul, let's, you see, it's very easy. China goes to the South China Sea, Japan has a problem, Vietnam has a problem. Japan doesn't have a status to fight back. So America has to support Japan when it has to come under such any attack. Why is not America going down and fighting China? It doesn't happen like that. There are many locations where China has gone in. There have been earlier occasions also when China has come in our
So Rajiv Pratap Rudy said, let's get realistic here.
Let's be mature while you are handling anything.
Okay.
Let's be mature and let's talk in a sense. We are not talking about Pakistan.
We are not talking about a country like Pakistan. We are dealing with China, so we need to be a little mature. Okay, one second. There are hands raising.
Can I come in?
Okay, Colonel RSN, go quick because you raised your hand first. Yes, go ahead.
Nobody is comparing China with Pakistan, and esteemed panelists must understand that the Chinese have a tactical objective, there is a strategic objective, and there is a grand strategy. And the strategic objective, of course, it has got to do with Gilgit-Baltistan, it has got to do with 370, it has got to do with regional power balance, and the grand strategy is, of course, Indo-Pacific. Who doesn't understand that? And as far as the Americans are not doing anything, who did that elephant walk, sir? Are you aware of that elephant walk? Who inflicted coronavirus on 2 aircraft carriers? President Theodore Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan, one went at birth in Vietnam and the other in Japan. Do you know how many passages aircraft carriers are making and destroyers and frigates are making through Taiwan Straits?
Okay.
Read South China Morning Post. Between 20th and 30th December, they have clearly said that no way we will accept the verdict of elections in Taiwan. So the war posturing in South China Sea and East China Sea is much more than what is on your borders. So if you think that tactically you will be able to resolve it, good luck to you. I am with you. We'll see tomorrow what happens. It has got DBO. When we landed our globe master there, it was a strategic message. When we abolished Article 370, it was a strategic message. So here, I mean, if you think that, by tomorrow morning and 2 sides will go, I wish it happens. Well, good luck to you, but I don't think so. Because the Chinese have a strategic objective.
Okay.
And everything is being done.
So you believe that the response should have been firmer?
और सर ये एक मिनट और ये मत कहिएगा कि वो वॉर देखिए सब अपने नाक में मास्क लेके पहन रहे हैं और सब बच्चे स्कूल नहीं जा रहे हैं, मजदूरों पे कहर ढारा गया, या बायोलॉजिकल वॉरफेयर है और वॉरफेयर की बात कर रहे हैं। ये कौन सा कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है हमारे देश में? ये बार ये इतने हजारों साल में never biological warfare has been unleashed at this scale, and yet you are talking war and war mongering.
Okay, so you're of the opinion that India should keep its head. That's what you're saying, Colonel RSN. Okay, let me open this out because this has been set up interestingly. General G.D. Bakshi wants to respond.
Moment.
Okay, General G.D. Bakshi, quick response, and I want to go back to Ajay Shukla and Mr. Sareen, as well as Ghanshyam Tiwari. Yes, and yes,
I would,
Mr. Sibal. Yes, General
Rahul,
Bakshi.
I would just like to remind Mr. Rudy Pratap that I have spent 37 years soldiering for my country, and quite a lot of it was against China. I am well aware of the difference between China and Pakistan. But I resent the insinuation that when it is China, we should kowtow. And when it is Pakistan, we should get muscular. I think we are strong enough to take on and, hold our own against China. We should have that confidence now. So many years, decades after 1962, I would urge our political leaders to have the confidence that your armed forces can stand up to China,
okay,
and there do not have to be gradations in response of and kowtowing.
Okay.
And when China crosses a particular threshold, you have to.
We need to respond. We need to respond firmly with resolution. Okay. There's a bit of a divide on the panel right now, but let me just go back to 1 second, sir. Let me go back to both Sushant Sareen and Ajay Shukla. Ajay Shukla, the statement is out from the MEA. We're also awaiting word, we are being told, from the Indian Army on exactly the casualty figures, etc., and perhaps what exactly transpired. The MEA statement seems to be a firm one, but some people believe that it could have been firmer. It should have been more resolute. Where do you come in on this?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm completely stunned by the suggestion of Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy that we should adopt one set of parameters for dealing with Pakistan and one set of parameters for dealing with China. It seems to imply that it's okay for China to kill Indian soldiers, but it's not okay for Pakistan, and we will retaliate against Pakistan, but we can't retaliate against China. Now, I have to say, while being shocked, I am not even slightly surprised, because the entire method that this government has adopted for dealing with this crisis from day one has been to pretend that it does not exist. First, when Chinese troops walked into Indian territory, the government pretended that it did not exist. Multiple handouts to friendly correspondents that this is not happening, that the Chinese crossed over and they went back after they crossed over. This channel faithfully recited all those things. Then when the Chinese said that we will have a border meeting and refused to talk about Galwan, that was overlooked by the government, that was overlooked by this channel. Then it became disengagement. Nobody asked the question that if Chinese had never entered and never sat down here, what were they disengaging about? So all in all, from the word go and culminating in the MEA statement for today, the government statement has been weak-kneed, pusillanimous, and totally devoid of intent and understanding. I think that you need to take a much stronger stand. Indian soldiers have been killed, Indian lives have been lost. Whether it's China or whether it's any country, it needs to be sort of told exactly what will be done, and that needs to be executed. I think the time for this government to treat China with kid gloves is over.
Okay, that is, of course, if the government has treated China with kid gloves, and the tirade that you just unleashed against various media houses, etc., is true, which it is not. But that aside, Mr. Ajay Shukla, Colonel RSN wants to respond to you. Yes, Colonel RSN, a quick response to Ajay Shukla. Yes, the implication is that this government has somehow acted pusillanimously and sold a particular version to pliable media channels, and only Ajay Shukla has stood there on the front lines of reportage and reported the truth. That's the simple implication. Okay.
Exactly.
Come on. That's the implication. Low blows.
I don't know.
Chinese style. Okay.
No. I don't know what. I don't know what is his source of information. I go by open sources and whatever I can ferret out of various internet sites. But let me tell you, I think he is forgetting that we abrogated Article 370 and made a very strident claim on Gilgit-Baltistan. Probably that hurts him. Probably we have said that we will revisit this entire, this arrangement between China and Pakistan, and regarding China-Pakistan economic corridor. He is worried about that. Probably we were making a strategic road from Darbuk to DBO. That is probably, and that is why this Galwan standoff has taken place. That is what probably hurts him. We have today phenomenal strategic airlift capability and tactical lift capability. That is what probably hurts him. And he's very comfortable with this war of tents. He was very, I don't know what he's talking, that so much was happening. I mean, this is the first time casualties have taken place, and before that, भाई आपने भी ट्रेनिंग किया, मैंने कभी वॉर ऑफ टेंट्स नहीं सुना है, आपने सुना होगा. तो आई डोंट नो व्हाट इज योर सोर्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, बट प्रोबेबली I don't know. I mean, that you may be having some vulnerable areas or some vulnerable spots. I can't make out that bad, but I think it hurts you. It hurts you when India has made such strong strategic moves, and this move is totally strategic. That is what I have said. And hats off. Hats off that somebody thought of landing that that Globemaster in the DBO.
On a day when 10 Indian soldiers have
lost
their lives at
balance
the hands of the Chinese, this man has the guts and the nerve to turn around and pretend that we are teaching Chinese a strategic lesson. Tell him to wake up.
Look, Ajay Shukla, I don't remember the UPA ever.
Listen, Ajay Shukla, mind your language. Mind your language. I know where the money is coming from.
What he has to say.
Ajay Shukla, mind your language. This is not National Defence Academy. Mind your language. Mind your language. Mind your language. I know you through and through. I know who are your paymasters. I know you very well.
One second.
I know who are your
Is it unfair? Sushant Sareen, is it unfair today to suggest? Okay, gentlemen.
Use your language. नहीं, आप जितनी इज्जत दोगे उतना ही इज्जत मैं दूंगा आपको.
I have no izzat for you. Forget it.
Ajay Shukla, we are not here to listen to your character certificates, please. We are not here to listen to you giving character certificates to people and their competency. One second.
Do you have one decent output on strategic matters? Do you have one decent output on strategic matters? You are every day demoralizing this country on various channels. Every day.
Wonderful,
and I am ashamed that you are a soldier.
And you're the morale booster.
I am sure you have never seen the high altitude areas.
Strategic lesson.
You're talking in voice soldier. That's all I know.
Ajay Shukla, a little unfortunate that you've hit below the belt all through the time that we have given you to speak openly. You misused your time. That's not fair. Actually, Mr. Ajay Shukla,
every day
you sound very bitter, and I don't know what the problem is.
Don't smile.
I don't know what the problem is. You sound very, very bitter, Mr. Shukla, and it's not on. Give me 30 seconds. I need to go to the others. I'm not going to get sucked into some, and I deliberately didn't take your bait, Ajay Shukla. I know that you have some agenda to try and paint the government into being weak. I know that you are close to the Congress party. That's fine. You can have your, you can have your, one second, Mr. Shukla, you can have your affiliations. No one stops you, but don't forget that you also served this Indian army, and I don't remember a time.
I don't forget
I don't remember a time when previous governments gave the Indian army a free hand to walk across the LAC and do things that you are suggesting should be done. But nonetheless, give me 30 seconds. Please allow me. Let me bring in Sushant Sareen. There is Kanwal Sibal. There are respectable voices. There's Mr. Rudy, who's kept himself above all of this. There's Ghanshyam Tiwari there also. Let others also have an opportunity. You made your point. You've said that we haven't been up to it. You've said that the media has been fed all sorts of handouts and is culpable and pliable and complicit with the government spin. Fine, those are your views. Those are your views. You might have those views. The rest of the country, I'm sorry, doesn't agree with you. We still have some regard for our forces. We will not suggest that our forces gave their second best or their third best today. I think our forces have hit back. There have been casualties. You haven't mentioned those casualties. I didn't hear you even once talk about Chinese casualties. You have gone ahead and broken an Omerta code by making public the fact that we have had 10 casualties. Those families have not even been informed. How shocking and callous is that? And the three names that some channels are putting out, those families have not been informed. The Indian government hasn't come out and said officially who has been killed and who has... No, one second. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. There are some lines which you should not cross. And those lines are written in stone and convention. Please, I don't want to get dragged into this tu meme. Give me 30 seconds. I want to bring in Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, look, we can have our point of view. We can disagree about the wording of the MEA statement. We can say that it's not tough enough, it's not hard enough. But to suggest that this government has been any weaker than any others in the past in trying to send a message across to China is being disingenuous. I would certainly say that, and I have no hesitations in doing so. Mr. Sareen.
So Rahul, here's the thing. I think what Ambassador Sibal was saying earlier, that there could be a point of view that you wanted to play down some of this thing which was happening around the border, because this was not the first time something like this was happening. But what really concerns me today is on a day, and I can disagree with Ajay Shukla, and I don't have to be disagreeable while disagreeing with him on some of the things, but on one thing I'll agree with him, that on a day when you've had as many casualties as you have had, and it's certainly more than 3, you have the ruling party spokesperson coming onto your channel, and for a second I was mistaken whether he is the spokesperson of the BJP or the CCP, because for him to suggest that because this is China, we need to be very, very careful and we need to ignore the casualties of the Indian soldiers, that we need to play it down. I think that is appalling. He doesn't need to be, saying all of that. He can say the same things in a different language. But for him to say that, I think that disheartens us much more than anything else. Then to talk about the mechanisms. Yes, there were these mechanisms, but these mechanisms have been under strain for years now. We have seen the kind of fisticuffs, we've seen melees happening along the border on numerous occasions, and an accident was waiting to happen. We have seen this, and we should have expected something like this will happen. Somebody like me has been talking about it, that this is going to be extremely accident prone, and whether it is by accident, whether it is deliberate, whether it is a provocation which happened or somebody got provoked, that does not even matter to me. And neither does it matter to me how many Chinese soldiers died. I don't give a damn whether 200 died. For me, what is important is that the Chinese did something which resulted in Indian casualties which should not have happened. Should the MEA have given a tougher statement? Perhaps yes, they could have probably framed the statement much better. But I think we need to get out of this business of statement versus statement. I don't think the statements are the issue right now. I think the issue is both on the borders, what is the situation out there, and what is your game plan going forward. Are you going to continue to play this down and pretend as though, okay, fine, some really nasty things have happened and it doesn't matter anymore? As they say in Punjabi, mitti pao, throw some mud on it and move on.
Okay.
Or are you going to make this something which is going to change the paradigm of India-China relations? I am more interested in that than the rest of the stuff which we are talking about. And this.
I'm glad you brought the focus back.
Why we need to be disagreeable?
I'm glad you brought the focus back on the issues without being disagreeable, and that's the spirit in which we want to continue with this debate. Mr. Rudy, why are we drawing distinctions when Indian Jawans have been martyred, an officer has been martyred? I can't go into speculation as to how many people on our side, how many of our Jawans or officers have been martyred, but what we know officially is 3. Why should we, therefore, suggesting that we should treat the Chinese and the Pakistanis different? This is something that has struck a chord with some of our panelists here, and they find that rather shocking.
My submission here has been completely different. It's a matter because I know I am not an expert on China, nor I am an international expert, but as an Indian, as a spokesperson of my party, I realize that there has to be a discussion, there should be a discussion. We shall not be sounding apologetic at any given point of time, be it China or be it any other country. My only submission is that we still do not know the facts. We are aware that the martyrdom of Captain Colonel Babu and other 2 soldiers have taken place. We are only aware that the Chinese had entered and established a post beyond the LOC. And we are also aware that there has been a major incident there which is most unprecedented, But at this point of time, putting words and trying to put in a fact that this is the time we have to challenge China is not the right diplomacy which we are talking about. And that is what I'm trying to point out. You have every right to analyze what has happened. And the government would be coming back and definitely coming back with all the facts. But this is a point we are talking about an incident in which we do not have the facts complete, and we are trying. What Ajay Shukla was trying to do was something which was trying to insinuate a situation which people like us would never agree to. What General Bakshi was trying to say is that we have to take a revenge sort of a thing. That I would not agree to. What Mr. Sibal said, of course, he has his own viewpoint. He wanted a stronger statement. I do not know the name of the other gentleman. He also said that I am trying to compare Pakistan and China. No. We know where China stands and we know where Pakistan stands. And that is what I'm trying to say, is that let us not be so eager to find a solution right away when the incident and the negotiations. And there have been, the Sikkim was a bad face-off in 2008. Dipsang was a bad face-off in 2013. We still found a solution and we moved ahead.
Yes.
I'm not being apologetic. What I'm suggesting is this is not the end of what has happened in China. So my submission has been misconstrued, and if that is so, I'm sorry about it. But the fact remains that till the time full facts are with us,
okay, I think that's an appreciable.
We should not make insinuations.
At least the apology.
Which is not required.
I think he's being humble and modest, saying that, look, at the end of the day, if you think that I'm trying to suggest that we should have a different military approach to both Pakistan and China, that's wrong. All I'm saying is that let time flow, let's get more information, because the way in which China and Pakistan deal with India are different. So we should have a different variegated strategy and approach. Do you find that reasonable, Mr. Kanwal Sibal, the statement from Mr. Rudy?
No, I found him very defensive unnecessarily. He totally misunderstood what I said. I began by saying very clearly, and I repeated it, that I can understand the government wants to act.
Mr. Sibal, we've lost your voice. We can't hear you. I think you might have pressed the mute button. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I had prefaced what I said by saying that I can understand the government wants to act responsibly, appear responsible, appear statesman-like, try and diffuse the situation, de-escalate the situation, and hence the statement has been worded accordingly. What I said in addition to this was that dismissing the killing of a colonel, especially the commanding officer, and the two of our soldiers as avoidable casualties in a formal statement doesn't sound nice. It is not an avoidable casualty. It is an unacceptable blow by the Chinese. And thirdly, when I was talking about Stone Age, I was referring to the PLA, not to our side. That these guys who showcase their missiles and everything else in their parades in Beijing, when it comes to India, they use iron rods and clubs with nails and this and that. This is what they have descended to. It was not a reflection on the Indian Army. I have great respect for the Indian Army. I was castigating the manner in which the PLA conducts itself and the manner in which they are acting like hoodlums, like thugs, like street muggers at 14,000 heights in Ladakh. And finally, I think that Mr. Rudy is right that we don't know the facts, but I think in an open society like ours, it is important to give the facts as early as possible, because then a lot of speculation starts. And I've been reading news which demoralizes me personally, that some Indian soldiers haven't returned to base, they may have been taken prisoners. Now, in order to prevent this kind of misinformation, fake news, if it is that, it is very important that facts, as much as is possible, should be made known to the public as early as possible, so that the perceptions are controlled and are moved in the right direction. Otherwise, a lot of unnecessary demoralization can occur.
Okay, just 1 second. Ghanshyam Tiwari hasn't had a word in as yet. It's been 40 minutes into the show. Ghanshyam Tiwari, you've heard Mr. Rudy. Your response to Mr. Rudy?
Well, Rahul, let me start by paying my deepest regards to the family of our martyred soldiers, our brave martyred soldiers, and I think the nation is outraged. I must also start with one specific point, that we have a defense minister who is clueless. In the last 1 week, the defense minister has been addressing silly rallies called Jan Samad rallies. It clearly means that he has displaced sense of responsibility, and if he is not interested in being a defense minister of India, he must simply resign. My final point is that the trade deficit under Modi government, so-called Atmanirbhar Nara, right, has been more than 4 lakh crore every year. So this government single-handedly has given more business to China than last 5 governments of India. So this government has no place to hide for its callous handling of China. With respect to the last major update in the media on this issue on June 10, including Times Now, the point that you took, and Times Now and other media channels took, guided by the government, and rightly so, was that the situation has eased. So it was clearly that the government miscalculated and misinformed the entire country. We are not run by a dictator like China is. We are a democracy, a vibrant democracy. The media and opposition must ask the question. Akhilesh Yadav ji has openly asked that the government must come clear on its standpoint.
I think you
Yadav ji has spoken in parliament repeatedly, warning Modi government about the danger from China.
So your 3 points are the following. Number one, that the defense minister is clueless and he must resign. Atmanirbhar Bharat is a fake, empty slogan because we have given more business to China than at any time in any other government before. That's what you're saying of the NDA. And thirdly, that the government misread the situation, coming out suggesting to all and sundry, and the media lapped it up by suggesting that there's a de-escalation. I think you've forgotten that the Chinese also echoed that sentiment not once but at least twice, saying that they were also looking for a peaceful resolution, etc., etc. And if you remember, allow me, Mr. Tiwari.
I do not trust China. I have held my silence for 45 minutes. One final point. I think we must look China in the eye as Chief Minister Modi used to speak.
Okay.
The Chief Minister Modi will not consider Mr. Rudy as his
disparity between Chief Minister Modi and Prime Minister Modi is not looking China in the eye. Mr. Rudy, quick response to Mr. Ghanshyam Tiwari. I have Srinjoy Chaudhary coming in, and I want to go back to General Bakshi and Mr. Sibal once more. Yes, including Ajay Shukla and Mr. Sareen. Yes.
You see, I shall recuse myself because I don't want to sound moronish answering questions which are absolutely irrelevant. So I'll recuse from answering and taking up issues which would make me sound very moronish on the television. So that is me for this point on Ghanshyam Tiwari.
Okay. Now, what we have is a principled position being taken by the BJP. Don't want to get into the trough of rhetoric because these are irresponsible statements being made by an opposition party that has no skin in the game and therefore can say what they want to at this sensitive time. Okay, I just want to go straight across to Srinjoy. Srinjoy, an alert has also been issued by the Himachal government, I'm told. Can you give us a quick update on that?
Well, Himachal has a border with China. Let's not forget that. There should be something, an alert in Himachal. There should be an alert in Uttarakhand. There should be an alert in Sikkim. And there should be an alert in the Arunachal area.
So in the Kinnaur and Lahore Spiti areas, an alert been issued
to ensure that there is absolutely
no transgression by the Chinese.
You have to be absolutely sure.
I just want to ask you, we are expecting a statement from the military to give us more details on what has actually transpired on the Chinese side. Are we expected to hear those details? And when is that press conference supposed to take place? Srinjoy.
What we heard is that a statement is likely. A statement is likely from either the Defense Ministry or the Army, perhaps the latter, but that hasn't come as yet. There is a lot that the Army would have to confirm about the number of casualties. There has been idle talk about actually how many casualties there have been, fatal, how many injuries there have been, how many people
are
missing.
So are you saying that those people who are speculating about the number right now are being irresponsible
we will have to wait
and jumping the gun? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's important to get an official statement from the Army to know exactly what the position is.
Fair enough.
Rather
General
than
G.D.
make
Bakshi.
speculative.
General Bakshi.
I'd like to reinforce a point that Mr. Sibal had raised, a very valid point. Look, armies cannot forego tactical procedures and standard operating procedures and ways of functioning in favor of a kind of a normative conduct that the Chinese are trying to enforce in this area. That we will only deal with fisticuffs, we will defend territory with iron rods and sticks and stones, because there can be serious, casualties that can occur in this fallacious approach. I will just like to remind people of 1967. Initially, then also we had this attitude of getting involved in fisticuffs and pushing and shoving, etc. And at Nathula, this cost us very dear, because when in the scuffle, a Chinese political officer, the Amban, was hit, he just moved his troops back into the bunkers, they opened the flats, and they braved their machine guns. They opened fire on our people, and in the first, very dose, we had about 50 casualties. Please don't let your troops fall into that trap. And I would enjoin, as a veteran, I would enjoin the present hierarchy to now move the troops out of that fallacious way of working, and let's not have any nonsense.
Let's have no nonsense then, General G.D. Bakshi. He is sending a uncompromising message nightly here on our programs to China. Now, breaking news coming in. I have precisely 30 seconds on this show. Unfortunately, running out of time. Pakistan CDA, the Shahzada affair, has been summoned in. A démarche has been issued on the abduction and torture of Indian High Commission officials. So India has formally claimed that its two officials that were abducted yesterday were tortured. Big statement from the Indian government. The two officials of the Indian High Commission were forcibly abducted by Pakistani agencies on 15 June 2020 and kept in illegal custody for more than 10 hours. They were released only after strong intervention by the High Commission of India in Islamabad and the Ministry of External Affairs. Big breaking news coming in, viewers. India accusing Pakistan of torturing its two staffers of its High Commission, and the Shahzada affairs has been summoned and issued in démarche. We've run out of time. This story gets bigger as we move forward into the evening with Navika Kumar and the News Hour.